Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're at. It's still kind of mid-morning here in Iowa. It's 10:41. It's December 23rd, Tuesday, 2 days before Christmas. And if you don't celebrate Christmas, happy holidays. Anyways, I'm so sorry about my absence. I had went out for lunch with my landlord about a week and a half ago. And we went to Walmart just to look around, do some shopping and stuff like that. And crazy thing is that her daughter was there also, but she was with she has like this lady she goes shopping with. And she dropped me off. We had went for Mexican and she had dropped me off, and I came home. I didn't really feel very good, but I laid down in the middle of my stomach, like right where your pancreas is, was just, it was just, oh my God, it was hurting me so bad. And I would say I went through about 4 days of being extremely sick. I only threw up twice, but it was the rest of the other stuff. So it was like just horrible. I ended up in the ER on Friday or Saturday. I can't remember. These days are like all together. So I ended up in the ER with dehydration. And so they topped me off and sent me home. I'm doing a whole lot better today. I finally was able to eat some chicken noodle soup. So I got some noodle soup in me. I hadn't eaten for like a week. Like I couldn't even put anything in my mouth. But I hope everyone is staying healthy. It was called the norovirus, and it's really contagious. Well, my landlord's daughter caught the same virus. So crazy. We must have gotten it from Walmart that day or something. I don't know. But oh my God. So I think I'm finally coming around from that. And tomorrow I'm going to start preparing the food for Christmas because my daughter will be coming to see her mommy. And so I'm kind of excited about that. And of course, Leah has to put in her 2 cents. She says hello. But I hope everyone has a wonderful Christmas if you celebrate Christmas. I doubt. I could go live. Who knows about me? After Amy leaves, there's really nothing that we would be doing anyways. So, what else? That's about it for the life update. Been helping a friend. He broke his foot. Son's friend. So we've been helping him. We took him to the doctor yesterday. They want him to go back today to see the surgeon. It's broken a pretty bad spot. So we're going to do that today after Son gets off work. And probably just come home and relax and chillax. For tomorrow, I did a little bit of cleaning today. Did about as much as I could tolerate. My body just, it aches sometimes. Just from my neck. But there's been a lot going on in the true crime and celebrity news. Let me tell you. You've got the Epstein files. You've got the Nick Reiner. You've got David and the 764 group, RICO group. 15-year-olds making groups, gangs, RICOs. God, what is going on? But a viewer, Kathy, had me watch this Reiner Family Murders. It's a court TV special. I hope I don't get doxxed for doing this, but we're going to watch that today because I feel like I hope everyone has seen it. It's a really good documentary about kind of what led up to what happened. And me as a mental health, I suffer with mental health really bad. But I don't let it bring me down. I don't let it stop me from doing my daily things or going live. I just don't. Like, you can't. You know, I mean, I have the 4 seasons here in Iowa. I'd be depressed every day. But they said he was schizophrenic. And from what I hear today that I watched on TMZ, it wasn't just a diagnosis that happened a couple weeks ago. This was years ago that he was diagnosed. So for all those years, they were mistreating him as an addict instead of someone that was suffering with mental health. So he wasn't properly being treated. And I know in my mind, I had a couple stints with the mental institution at a young age. And I was misdiagnosed also. They said I had bipolar disorder. It was not. It was post-traumatic stress disorder from something very tragic to me happened when I was a child. So, we can only imagine. And I've also read his mom suffered with mental health. And mental health is hereditary, you know, and it doesn't matter if it's hereditary. It still happens. Mental health is mental health. We tend to mask the mental health with rugs because we're not properly being treated, because nobody takes the time, because that person's a rug addict. They just want to send them on their way, give them some Suboxone or methadone and send them on their way. And that's not fair for the person that suffers with the mental health, because in their mind, they're still struggling. So, because I'm not going to lie, I've struggled with addiction myself. Still do. But I have no other choice now, where I live in pain every day, and it's just not plausible. Like, I can't live in pain every day. So let's go over this. The Reiner family murders. And maybe some of us might kind of get an idea. Get an idea of really what's going on.
Reiner was a household name, and that fame and prominence grew to even greater heights in Hollywood as he became a preeminent movie director, responsible for such iconic films like When Harry Met Sally, The Princess Bride, and A Few Good Men. Rob's first marriage was to fellow actor and director Penny Marshall. Rob adopted Penny's daughter, Tracy. His second marriage was to Michelle Singer. Together, they had 3 children, Jake, Nick.
Y'all, this ain't the one that's got the pictures and stuff. Oh no. Oh, let's hear this.
A person of interest. Nick Reiner is due back in court for arraignment on January 7th, but given his mental health history, it's an open question whether he'll ever stand trial. I'm joined now by Chris Mohandy, a clinical police and forensic psychologist, and Mark Garagos, trial lawyer, my friend of show, host of every podcast, including Two Angry Men and Reasonable Doubt. Welcome to both of you. Thank you for joining me. Dr. Mohandy, There are two very big questions at play here, right? Whether Nick is competent to stand trial and whether he's going to plead not guilty by reason of insanity, what we call NGI. Competence looks to whether Nick can appreciate the charges and understand and participate in his defense. And NGI looks to whether he knew right from wrong and could appreciate the nature of his conduct at the time the crime was committed. So
I guess we really can't say because we don't know. We don't know what he told the detectives when he got to jail that night. We don't know what they told. We don't know what he told them. Did he talk to them? Did he share his thoughts? Did he say what he did? Did he say that it was wrong? We don't know.
What will doctors and experts be looking at to see if Nick is, number one, competent or not to proceed to trial, and number two, whether he was not guilty by reason of insanity?
Well, those are two entirely different areas, as you've highlighted, and certainly the first issue is whether he can cooperate in his own defense, with his defense lawyers, and that means, does he recognize that they're even lawyers? Sometimes people are so mentally ill that they can't see their lawyer for who he or she is and what they're trying to do, and they may see them as imposters or other kinds of things in severe cases. So the first threshold is for him to be assessed potentially. I'm sure his legal teams, could be on top of that. To determine that, have him assessed by psychiatrists, psychologists, people that are used to doing these kinds of evaluations to determine A, whether he does have a mental illness, and B, whether he is able to participate in a meaningful way in his defense.
Just like I said, it's all going to stand on what he said to those detectives or those cops when they arrested him that night.
If he reaches that threshold at some point, which I expect, short or long term, that often happens in most cases, then the next issue is going to be, a different kind of evaluation where you're basically reconstructing, what he was thinking about and how he was processing information at or around the time of the alleged offenses. Meaning, did he have a mental illness that is a qualifying mental disease or defect like schizophrenia, delusions, hallucinations, command hallucinations. And, that's the first threshold. Is there a qualifying mental disease or defect? Mm-hmm. And then second, like you identified, did he even recognize that he was hurting a person, nature and quality, we call that, or that his actions were wrong, either legally or morally? Was he capable of making those kinds of distinguishing those things? And, it's going to be very important, how he presented the observations of others, in that immediate time window. And those doctors will be looking at the time leading up to it, his history, things that he may have said, observations at time of arrest, as well as his conduct just afterwards as his treatment unfolds in the volumes of treatment records. So it's a investigative process that is going to be deep and thorough. There's going to be testing involved, and all that kind of review.
So it's not just obviously what he says to the psychiatrist. It's also testing that.
Okay, what I'm not understanding is I've heard through these news stations like News Nation or whatever that Rob called Conan O'Brien and said, "Can I bring Nick to the party?" Because Nick was not invited because of prior actions that he displayed at other, at other engagements. And I guess, because they wanted Rob to be there and his wife, they said, yeah, it was a black tie event. Nick showed up in a black hoodie and pants. So that just goes to show he was being going against what I'm sure his parents told him. We have to do what we need to do here. And then at the end of the party, Rob told somebody that he was scared of him. Now, if he had a med change and you know this, why are you taking him to a party? You're just setting this poor child, this poor, not kid, this poor man up for failure. Anything at that party could have set him off. He was on a med change. He was going through a lot in his mind. He was probably hearing things. Who knows? This is just all my opinion. So, just my opinion.
That is conducted. Mark, not guilty by reason of insanity is written all over this case, okay? So do you agree that Alan Jackson will pursue an insanity defense for Reiner? And how do you see this defense play out? I know it's early in terms of...
Do you think Alan Jackson gets a phone call when these celebrities like this cause themselves havoc in the city, and he's there to tell them, do not speak to detectives? I wonder if he's there to do that, or has somebody there to call there and be like, you tell him, do not talk to nobody.
What we know about the evidence, but we do know a lot about his mental health.
I really think, and I've said this before, I can't imagine that Nick Reiner at this point is competent. If in fact that he committed the acts, that isn't the end of the story, obviously. It's got to be what is his mental state. My experience in these kinds of parasite cases and people who are suffering from schizophrenia is once you put him into Twin Towers, and all indications by him wearing that blanket outfit, as I call it, the bedspread outfit, is that he's being housed in the mental health wing of the Twin Towers in the LA County jail system. I would bet you that he's in a fog. He doesn't understand what is happening. He hasn't regained any kind of semblance of a baseline of rationality. And I'd be shocked if Alan thinks at this point, this early date, late December, that he's in a point where he's competent. And I think, secondly, NGI to me is written all over this. I'm just not so sure we're ever going to get there that quick. You know, there's a revolving door of when, if you declare a doubt as to competency, and it's up to the lawyer to do that first, that triggers a whole process. And then who knows, if he's declared incompetent, he goes to the mental health facility. They get him competent, then he comes back to county jail, he disintegrates again. It's a revolving door I've seen in parasite cases like this that can go on for a decade.
And you and I both know Twin Towers, you know, I've had clients' mental health decline in the Twin Towers. So it's like, we don't know what this, and I think that's why the arraignment was continued to January, to provide that opportunity to evaluate him. Dr. Mohandi, Nick got in an argument with his father, maybe both parents, but definitely his father, the night before at Conan O'Brien's holiday party. He then came to the family home, went to a Brentwood gas station, checked into a Santa Monica hotel, you know, around 4 a.m., later went to the USC area, miles away from the family home, and was in another gas station buying a drink. I mean, these are all deliberate acts, right? Couldn't these facts be used to counter a claim that this young man is of a completely sane mind and acted with deliberation, premeditation?
Well, the important part about the insanity defense is it is an affirmative defense. The burden of proof is upon the defense team to prove it, you know, at a level of more likely than not. And, you know, the prosecution will.
But don't you think that maybe at some point after or during the act, he could have snapped out of it and been like, what the hell? What am I doing? You know, because wouldn't that have been psychosis? You know, he didn't know. Could he have snapped out of it and very well took the train, got a hotel room? Or I heard he got the hotel room before. So yeah, then that would have been something more. I don't know. There's so many stories in this. It's crazy.
Certainly identify behaviors that they think are inconsistent with it, But we don't know yet what he was thinking during those moments when he went to those places. What was, what he may have been doing, texting people, calling people. There's not enough information yet to make any kind of determination as to the meaning of that behavior. But certainly the argument will be, he's fleeing. That shows that he knows that he did something was wrong. He's putting distance between himself and so forth. But again, this is very premature to even come to any conclusions about the meaning of it just yet.
Mm-hmm. Mark, do you see a scenario by which this case never goes to trial because of the complexity of Reiner's mental health issue?
I absolutely do. I don't think for everybody, I got into this argument with my podcast partner, Harvey, to Angry Men. For every person who thinks this is going to be a quick trial, I would just tell you, sit back and wait, because I don't think it's going to be there. To your point about the Twin Towers, it's not just limited to Twin Towers in LA County. I've had the cases in San Diego and Orange County and Ventura. As soon as you bring the accused back to the holding facility, local holding facility, they inevitably, I've watched it so many times, somebody who was competent when they were being held comes down and just completely disintegrates when they're in the county jail. And you get this kind of endless cycle of competency, incompetent, and then they ship them back, and then 6 months or a year later they come back again after being declared competent. I've had judges who've actually gone so far in LA County as to order a Tascadero to transport them directly to their courtroom so that it doesn't happen and don't go to county jail.
Yeah, it's awful. And when people ask how a lawyer is paid, right? My response is none of your damn business, because that information is actually privileged and confidential. But of course, I understand this is a high profile case and this has been a big question, and if you're running low on compassion or having no experience with a loved one who struggles from mental illness, you just cannot wrap your head around how a family can pay for a killer survivor's, legal bills. Are you surprised? Are you surprised that the family is paying Nick's legal bills? And what happens, though? What if they decide to cut him off at some point?
Well, look, the minute it came out that Alan had been retained, I predicted that the family was supportive. And sure enough, right on the heels of that, they issued a supportive statement. And there is nothing under the law that forecloses family members from supporting other family members. One of the things that I don't think, and you just alluded to it, that people don't quite understand is just the absolute pernicious nature of this schizophrenia. You mentioned in the package Michael Douglas and his son Cameron, and I represented Eric, Michael's younger brother, for many years. I watched the struggle that Kirk Douglas had with Eric before Eric passed away, and with their mother. I mean, it's awful. People don't understand. You don't not love your sibling. You may be in fear of them. You may get angry with them. You may want to just stuff them into a closet. But at the same time, it's an anguish, and you get drawn into it. It is it's an unbelievably difficult, emotionally exhausting experience.
Yeah, this is going to be very challenging. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me. Merry Christmas, happy holidays, and all the best in 2026.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below. And
So what do y'all think? I don't think he's going to go to trial, and if he does, it's going to be a long time. It's going to be a very, very, very long time. Very long time. What else was there? Oh, the Epstein. I don't think I can play those videos. I seen a video this morning that they released on Epstein. Him in the jail. Yeah, that just, this was 3 days ago.
We do want to continue to update you on the Nick Reiner situation there. Of course, it has been a really, really fast moving week here with the investigation of the horrible death of Rob Reiner and his wife, and then the arrest there of the 32-year-old son, Nick Reiner. But there's some new information out there. So we want to go out to TMZ's Michael Babcock joining us here with the latest. I was talking to you earlier this week, Michael, and I was saying every day it seems like there's new information. And yep, that is exactly what we're dealing with right now.
Yeah, Mike, you're not kidding. It's since that first night where it was a bit slow, it's been like a fire hose since. And the latest, or one of the latest things that we've learned is that Nick Reiner was diagnosed with schizophrenia and was really struggling and struggling so bad, Mike, that he had spent time in this LA-based rehabilitation facility that is really a place that's known, and maybe this is sort of an indication on some of the pressures of fame, but a lot of the children of celebrities who have had issues, whether it be mental health issues and or drug issues, addiction issues, have spent time at this facility. And that is a place where Nick had been treated. You're looking at this place, Mike. You're looking at like $70,000, give or take, a month to be treated at this facility. And again, that is where Nick Reiner was treated as of late. And I think it goes to show that he was not in great shape mentally and was really struggling in the weeks, especially leading up to these horrific crimes.
Yeah, totally. And I know that it's always easier looking back on things rather than being in the moment and making some decisions. But is there thinking now that is going on that should this Nick Reiner have even been at this party? What is some of the talks right now about that situation? Because it seems like, a very wild card situation being put.
No, I don't think that he should have been at that party. Why did they force him to go to this party? I wish we knew. I wish the family would come out and say more. I mean, he was living in the guest house. I mean, he's already destroyed it. You haven't fixed it. What else could he destroy? I mean, if he breaks into the house, I mean, he's not staying in the house, so then that would be charges against him. So I don't know why he was forced to go to this party.
Put in there by the family.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think that's a really fair question and a good point, Mike, because this was it's a fancy holiday party. You've got, suits and dresses, everybody dressed up nice, having the champagne. And he looked really out of place. If you talk to people who were at that party that night, they say he was wearing a hoodie, sort of had the hood up and did not look like he wanted to be there. And certainly didn't look like he wanted to socialize with anybody. And obviously then gets in this big blowout fight with his father at the event. And so much so that it gets so bad that they left. And I think it's fair to question if he should have been there. And you talk to people who had been around him in the weeks leading up to Sunday, and they will tell you, we talked to a gas station worker, for instance, who happened to know Nick for a really long time because it was kind of the convenience store where the family always went. So they had known him for decades. And they said, he was somebody fine who had issues over the years, but, somebody you could conversate with, and he seemed like a nice enough kid. But that was not the case as of 2 weeks ago, they said. And they said he seemed like a different person. So, if that was 2 weeks ago and he was somebody you couldn't even talk to because he was, so angry or so on edge, why was he at that party Saturday night? I think that's a good question.
Yeah, absolutely. And was the thinking maybe for the Reiners saying, look, if we don't bring him, we're going to be worried about what he's going to do. Maybe he'll just burn down our house. He's so mad at times. Was thinking of like, hey, if we have him here, at least we see him.
Yeah, you know what? Right. I can keep an eye on him and I know what's going on if he's with me. And I think they went to tremendous, and not even think, I know, Mike, they went to tremendous lengths to try and get him help over the years. And I just go back to this place, not that they didn't have a whole bunch of money, they obviously did, but, to put him up in this $70,000 a month facility to try desperately to get him some help that he needed badly, clearly. I think they did everything that they could under the sun to try and get Nick help. And to think that he has now been accused of taking their lives, the people who brought him into this world, it's just, it's such a tragic story. And now the family has got a decision to make. What do they tell the district attorney? Do they want the DA to pursue the death penalty? I am, you've got to, your heart's got to break for this family.
Yeah, I mean, there's no way to live. There's a tragedy at every corner when you're talking about the story with the family here associated. It's just horrible. Michael, before we go here, I just want you to comment on some of the more exclusive video that you guys have here. More video of Nick Reiner. What can you tell us about this new video out there?
Yeah, so this is not too far away from this Santa Monica hotel, Mike, that he checked into at around 4 a.m. And Saturday night's the Conan party. They go back to the home. He does not get kicked out of the house, which was something that people had thought or speculated, that the fight carries over from Conan's back to their compound in Brentwood, and that parents kick him out, and that he then gets violent. He was not kicked out. So, whatever happened. Clearly, we know what he's been accused of, but he was not kicked out of his home. That did not happen. This video, shortly before he checks into the Santa Monica hotel, hours later, as the hotel staff then goes to turn over the room for the next guest, they find the room totally, in, kind of disarray and bloodied, Mike. So, I think it's just further evidence to build a timeline here as the authorities are trying to figure out
maybe we'll never know why they had him go to that party when it was a bad idea. Clearly a bad idea. I don't have anything specific to talk about, but let's check on this was a day ago.
Hey guys, how's it going? Jackson here with TMZ. We love the feedback we got on yesterday's video. Seems like a lot of you guys want to hear about the David and Celeste Rivas murder case. Now, this is a case that has been widely reported on in the last few months, and a lot of people are trying to stay up to date as much as possible, but there's a lot of new information. If you haven't been staying up to date, or you don't even know what this case is about, I will give you a very quick recap before going into the explosive details that we have uncovered recently. There are a lot of shocking updates to this case that I think a lot of people are going to find very interesting, so stick around to the end to find out. So on September 8th of this year, a Tesla was reported abandoned after it sat dormant in Hollywood Hills for over a month. The Tesla was subsequently towed from Hollywood Hills to an impound lot in Los Angeles, and after sitting there for a few days, there were complaints of a very foul odor. Upon further investigation of this foul odor, the front trunk of the Tesla was opened, and in there sat the decomposing body of 15-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez.
But that's not the only place that they noticed that smell. Neighbors that were walking their dogs was smelling that car also.
After authorities investigated further, they found that the Tesla belonged to famous singer-songwriter David. Now, in the wake of this discovery, David was on a world tour outside of the state and subsequently canceled his tour when the body was identified. Now, after this, evidence started coming out that David was in a relationship with this child. Pictures, videos, and live stream clips started surfacing from months before that indicated that they were definitely more than just friends. Considering that Celeste was found in a car that belonged to David and that they were allegedly in an intimate relationship, immediately the public identified him as the #1 suspect. But there's been a lot of public outcry about this case, considering that a conviction hasn't been made and that a cause of death hasn't even been identified. Now, regarding the cause of death, the medical examiner has said that the body was so badly dismembered that it was extremely difficult to determine what the cause of death was. Now, he also said that her fingers were waterlogged, indicating that at one point or another her body was partially frozen, which lines up with the giant freezer that we found inside of David's house, which is big enough to store a body, something of note. Now, because of how big this case is, it's extremely hard to digest all the new information and updates because there's so much information that comes out in a case like this. But we have all the new pertinent information for you right here, which I'll get into right now. So as you may know, a grand jury was assembled in the middle of November to hear the evidence that LAPD had against potential suspects in the Celeste Rivas case. Now, what we know is that there is a second suspect aside from David who LAPD thinks played a role in either the killing or dismemberment of Celeste Rivas. We are not allowed to say who it is. We're not at liberty to say, but something to note. Now, what a lot of people don't know is that the LAPD tracked David's whereabouts in the months leading up to the event, and what they found.
But if you go on Reddit, they have found the person that they think. Took them, I think, they said 4 months to find what his real name was and stuff.
Was pretty eye-opening. Now, what the LAPD found was that earlier this year in the spring, David took a trip in the middle of the night to a highly remote area of Santa Barbara County where he stayed for hours on end before returning. Now, when I say highly remote, I mean that. He was in the middle of nowhere. There wasn't a gas station he could have gone to. There wasn't a building nearby or a hotel. When I say remote, he was literally in the middle of nowhere. But it's significant considering that it's come out as evidence. Now, I want to talk about something else. Something that a lot of people don't know is that we are watching this case with a magnifying glass. That grand jury is assembled in a court building, and we have people in that building. And the people we have in there have uncovered some crucial elements in this case. The first element being an appearance of one Robert Morgenroth. Now, when we got confirmation that this was the guy testifying before the grand jury, we did a deep dive into who he was. And it turns out that he was the general manager of Mogul Vision, which is David's record label. He was also the president of a company called Zara Brothers Travel LLC, which turns out to be David's touring company. Now, during the intermission of this testimony, Robert Morgenroth walked out of the courtroom and into the hallway, approaching his lawyer, Evan Jeunesse, who was out there waiting for him, and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, the words, "She was very pushy on why I didn't call the police." He went on to recount how he responded saying, "I said I didn't feel like I had the responsibility to do that. I just wanted to continue with the tour." Now, another person that the prosecution is highly interested in is one Josh Marshall. Now, Josh Marshall is David's second manager. And if that name sounds familiar, it's because Josh Marshall is the one that signed the lease agreement for the house that David was staying in. Now, the LAPD has said that the house is a huge piece to this puzzle. They've even said that they've obtained security camera footage from the cameras that are installed around the house. Now, after that happened, that's when the two suspects were formally identified. That's when the grand jury was assembled. So it begs the question, did they see something on that tape? Now, another big piece of information is that when Morgenroth was done testifying before the grand jury, he exited one courtroom and went into a second courtroom across the hallway. Now, the second courtroom that he went into is where a judge decides whether or not to hold you in contempt. Now, what's probably the biggest update yet is that an arrest has actually been made in this case, but not for the reason that you might think. Now, when Beth Silverman came out of this courtroom, she was visibly frustrated. Now, Beth said to Evan Jeunesse that she was going to issue a body attachment to force a female witness to testify before the grand jury. Now, according to Beth, this is a female witness that was supposed to testify and show up on the day.
I don't understand why they're protecting this man so much. If he didn't do anything wrong, then what is he so worried about? What is he so worried about? Then you shouldn't be worried. If you didn't do anything, then you shouldn't be worried.
That didn't. Now, we don't know who this female witness is, but she is to be arrested if she hasn't been already. Now, the final element that I'll talk about, and this is something that has piqued everybody's curiosity, is the 55-pound incinerator that was delivered to the residence that David was staying in. Now, this incinerator, some outlets are calling it a burn cage, is big enough to fill a body and burn up to 1,600 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, it's worth noting that this incinerator cannot legally be used within LA County, so it's curious as to why it would be delivered to a house and not a farm. Guys, it's been great reviewing the feedback on these videos. We love making these for you and keeping...
Wow, an incinerator? Really? What is going on? What are they hiding from us? I just don't know about him. I think some people aren't talking. And no one has seen him. No one even knows if that girl's been arrested. Oh, this is crazy. Oh, let's hear about the Epstein files. I'm not gonna go over them because that would take me a year and a half, I'm sure. Well, this is 4 hours ago. Let's hear what she has to say.
The Justice Department has now released a big new batch of documents in the Jeffrey Epstein investigation. And these include new details about Epstein's one-time friendship with President Trump. Look, there is a lot to go through. We said it's like more than 10,000 pages. So we're digging through this, but this is what is seen so far. In a 2020 email, an assistant U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York wrote that Trump traveled on Epstein's private jet, quote, more times than previously has been reported, at least 8 times between 1993 and 96. And on a flight in 1993, according to the email, there was just 3 passengers, Trump, Epstein, and what's described as a 20-year-old woman. Being mentioned in a trove of investigatory documents does not demonstrate criminal wrongdoing, a reminder, and Trump has not been accused of being involved in Epstein's crimes. On Monday, the president did seem dismayed that the release of any and all of these files, though, could harm the reputations of individuals he said, quote, innocently met Epstein. Now, remember, he is the man they also signed into law last month, the measure requiring the Justice Department to do just this, release the files.
A lot of people are very angry that pictures are being released of other people that really had nothing to do with Epstein, but they're in a picture with him because he was at a party, and you ruin the reputation of somebody.
As we speak, CNN has a team working through the documents just released. We are going to bring you the findings as they come in. CNN's Caitlin Polans is live in Washington this morning. A lot to work through, and we're just getting started. Caitlin, what do you have so far?
We're just getting started, but the headline here is quite clear. Donald Trump is all over these documents. In that first trove that the Justice Department released on Friday, there were just a few very scant mentions of Trump, including in a picture collected with a bunch of other.
You know what? If you didn't do anything wrong, then you shouldn't be worried. A picture is a picture. If it's an innocent picture and they can see that it's an innocent picture and you're not just standing there with some young, hot chick, then there shouldn't be a problem.
Pictures. In this one, there is already one very illuminating email that was sent during the first presidency of Donald Trump while prosecutors in the Southern District of New York were working on the case against Epstein co-conspirator Ghislaine Maxwell. This is after Epstein's death. And one of those prosecutors writes, I'm going to read from this letter because it is what was new to the prosecutors at the time and what is new to us now, receiving these documents now in the public sphere from the Justice Department. The prosecutor, unnamed, an assistant U.S. attorney of the Southern District of New York, wrote on January 8th of 2020, the flight records we received yesterday reflect that Donald Trump traveled on Epstein's private jet many more times than previously has been reported or that we were aware. That's the Justice Department in 2020, including during the period we would expect to charge in a Maxwell case. On one flight in 1993, Donald Trump and Epstein are the only 2 passengers listed. On another, the only 3 passengers are Epstein, Trump, and a then 20-year-old. On 2 other flights, 2 of the passengers respectively were women who would be possible witnesses in a Maxwell case. And then the assistant U.S. attorney concludes this email by telling his or her supervisors or superiors in the Justice Department didn't want any of this to be a surprise down the road. That's a direct quote. Now, Donald Trump, he has not commented yet on this particular revelation in the Epstein files coming out overnight and this morning that we are now surfacing for you here. But
okay, if he was on those flights, where did the flights go? Did they go to his private island? Because then Trump has a problem, in my opinion. Where did the flights go that the 8 times that he was on there? They should be able to tell.
Donald Trump has downplayed his relationship with Epstein in the past. And of course, this is something that is documenting his connection to Epstein traveling on that private plane in the 90s. So many years ago, Kate. But Trump even yesterday was saying that everyone was friendly with Epstein. He was all over Palm Beach. And Ghislaine Maxwell, this past year, has said in an interview with the Justice Department talking about Trump that she never saw him do anything that wasn't gentlemanly, that was any sort of impropriety at all. That said, this is a document that shows the possibility of Donald Trump having an intersection with Ghislaine Maxwell and the criminal case against her in which she was convicted for sex trafficking of minors. Clearly, this did not come out in the trial, but it is a pretty revelatory document. And Kate, it's just one page right now. This is the one page that I've walked you through. There are many, many more documents that we are piecing through this morning to see what else may be news here. But Donald Trump is in the latest batch of the Epstein files.
Yeah, much more to come, as Caitlin's laying out very clearly. Caitlin, thank you so much for jumping on. I really appreciate it. Sarah.
All right, joining me now is Sarah Kristoff, a former U.S. prosecutor for the Southern District of New York. Thank you for being here. Look, the DOJ has said they are releasing these documents more slowly because they are concerned about exposing victims. But in some of the emails that were released Monday afternoon, by Monday evening, some of those documents were taken down. We now know a victim's name who wished to remain anonymous was not redacted. We also know President Trump's name, as you heard there from Caitlin, appears in several places in the latest dump. This is the second time they've released documents only to remove them again. From what you have seen so far, is this just sloppy work from the DOJ, or do you see this as being more calculated?
So it is a hard job to redact these documents appropriately. The law set forth sort of categories of material that could be redacted. The DOJ has to go through these very carefully, make calls about, really page by page about what needs to be redacted or not. But they have all of the resources in the world to do that. I mean, they have thousands of lawyers, top lawyers, who could be working on these documents, following a protocol and making decisions. So, I mean, they certainly should be moving quicker than they are, and we shouldn't really be seeing mistakes, particularly mistakes regarding victims' names. But, this is a human process and a very laborious, time-intensive process.
And as we go through these, of course, other organizations going through these, the Washington Post saying that the latest tranche of Epstein documents, there was a subpoena sent to Mar-a-Lago in 2021 for records related to the government's case against Ghislaine Maxwell. What do you glean from that?
Yeah, I mean, some of the juiciest stuff really is going to be in internal DOJ emails, right? That's where the prosecutors are talking about the case. That's where they're sort of hashing out the evidence that they're seeing. So we're going to see some good stuff in there, as we already talked about this morning. The other place I think you're going to see really interesting material is in FBI reports, 302 reports, to the extent those are released in unredacted form or partially redacted form, because that's really going to set out the nature of the investigation and the steps that were taken in connection with the investigation.
You just mentioned this. There were a large number of documents showing in this latest tranche the objections filed by Epstein's victims in 2008 after the U.S. attorney in Miami agreed his office would not prosecute Epstein on federal charges in exchange for Epstein to plead guilty to less serious state charges of soliciting prostitution from a minor. What will these documents expose? What will people see in these documents as they're looking at, what happened there in Miami that a lot of victims are very, very upset with?
Yeah, I mean, the course of events here in terms of sort of the Florida prosecution or lack of prosecution and then the subsequent prosecution in the SDNY was sort of very complicated. And we're going to see more details uncovering that, more details about why decisions were made, why charges were brought or not brought. And that, I think, is going to be very illuminating about whether there was sort of political pressure or external forces on decisions that were made internally in these prosecutorial bodies.
There is a lot to go through, and as you said, this is an unprecedented amount of information having to come out of the DOJ, but the law says it was supposed to be out altogether, and now it's coming out in more of a trickle. Sarah Krisoff, thank you so much. I'm sure you will be back when we see more of these documents. Appreciate it.
Jess Michaels is the lead writer of a new statement from Epstein survivors. The statement raises multiple concerns about the way the release of files has been handled. She explained to CNN that no one from the Justice Department reached out to survivors for their input.
To me, what we're seeing is just an incredibly sloppy and inconsistent and thoughtless process that has been done to try to redact names or leaving things haphazardly unredacted. I felt very strongly that this was a clear-cut, black and white moment. Friday, December 19th at 11:59, if all of the files had not been released publicly, this DOJ had broken the law that took an act of Congress to pass and that the president signed. And to me, that is a point we need to keep talking about. We want to see financial records. We want to see all of the long list of indictments for Jeffrey Epstein back in that sweetheart deal, the Alex Acosta deal. We want to see all of that paperwork because it proves the negligence that we've been talking about all along.
The Justice Department has now released a big.
It's a really sad situation, the whole Epstein thing, and I don't know if I really want to get into that. That's a lot. That's a lot of work. A lot of work. I don't know, maybe after Christmas I'll think about it. All right, well, I've been on for an hour. Just thought I'd get on, say why I haven't been on for a few days, and let y'all know and just go over a few things. Nothing real serious. Not a real serious, live stream. But anyways, thank you so much for being here. And if you're in the replay, please like, share, and subscribe. I appreciate everyone's support. All right. And until the next one, see you then, and Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays.